Is it completely possible that we've just recorded our best episode ever for Spec Tales? I guess you'll just have to listen to find out. But secretly, yes, it is. Thank you for checking this episode out. I'm Jake, the Synopsis Butcher, joined by the ever-present, ever-bearded Jesus. How's it going, Jesus?
Oh man, ever bearded. It was crazy coming out the womb. I had this beard. They tried to trim it. I slapped the doctor, made the doctor cry. But yes, ever bearded.
Just an infant with a beard slapping a doctor. That's something you won't see every day.
It's a normal Tuesday in Texas, man.
For all you first-time listeners out there, thanks for checking us out. Spec Tales is a comic book podcast that has collectors and creators. What's your Grail tale? Each week, we explore new stories about the comic book grails we love, the epic journeys behind how they were obtained, and how they inspired new creativity.
We also dive into some comic book speculation and how, as collectors, we can help the hobby pay for itself.
All right, Jesus. So this week we've already said it. I've said it. I said I think this might be the best episode we've ever recorded. And that might be because we have another Texan on the show, writer and creator Jared Luján.
It was a Texas takeover, man. You talk about it being as an episode, but man, it was just a really fun, insightful conversation, man, with Jared.
Yeah, it really was a lot of fun. It got pretty heavy at times. There was some good stuff, but I don't want to give everything away because I want the listeners to actually, keep listening after this.
For sure, man. Don't miss out. Don't miss out. Listen to this conversation, and I think you'll be better for it at the end of it.
I'm also going to recommend that everybody go out and get a notebook because I'm telling you, lots and lots of good, if you're a reader, there's a ton of stuff to read. I wrote down so many notes from this episode about books that I had to go read. But if you're also a collector and maybe a speculator, you may want to also go get a notebook as well because there's lots of spec material in this episode too.
Yeah, and if you have trouble reading between the lines, read between the lines on this one.
If you have trouble, do it anyway, right?
Do it anyway, man. Try your hardest. Squint those eyeballs when you're listening.
We also need to remind people of something that's coming out later this month. So we need to remind you about the King Size Annual episode that we're going to be dropping on Wednesday, July 27th.
Yeah, it includes multiple new and returning guests. And also, one thing that I'm really excited about, a huge, huge giveaway.
Yeah, I don't think we can understate that or overstate that. Which one is it? I don't know. I don't keep track of these.
Both. That's how big it is.
We couldn't under or overstate this giveaway. So we are celebrating our 1 year anniversary, 50 plus weeks. I don't know how many weeks we're at anymore of every single Wednesday dropping an episode. So we've decided we want to celebrate by giving away comic books. We're going to give away spec books. We're going to give away Grail books. We're going to give away everything. So, well, not everything. I'm keeping my Famous Funnies 214, so you can't have that. But almost everything else is on the table, right, Jesus?
Yeah, we had to come to a what is it called? A compromise. So somebody's gonna get the Famous Funnies 214, but it's gonna be in the form of a Polaroid with Jake taking a picture of it.
Just a big old picture of me. Yeah, everybody wants that. They're gonna be coming in droves to this giveaway. All right, but enough about the awesome stuff we're going to be doing in the very near future. Let's get into the awesome stuff that you are about to listen to right now. So load up on spiked trash can lids and brush up on your best rendition of Master of Puppets. This is episode 51.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spec Tales, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Once again, welcome back, spectators, to the latest episode of Spectales. We sure do appreciate you joining us. This week, Jesus and I are proud to be joined by indie comic writer and member of the inaugural class for DC's Milestone initiative, hailing from the great state of Texas. Please welcome Jared Luján. Jared, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It is still super weird to be the DC Milestone Initiative guy. That's still pretty crazy.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jared. Thank you for another fellow Texanite. I know people don't say that, but I wanted to say it. Also, you messed up, Jake. You forgot to call him the Wu-Tang connoisseur. Everything Wu-Tang, you go to Jared. He knows what's up with that.
Yeah, well, I was putting a list together of all of the accolades and things like that, and I decided that ultimately we would only have time for about another half a segment if I got through all of Jared's accolades here. So I surmised it as short and concise as I could. Jared, I apologize if I shortchanged you.
No, that's I forgive you. It's okay.
Another thing too, man. There's so much stuff you got going on, Jared. You're quickly becoming one of the hardest working dudes in comics, man. Right? Like you have. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. I don't want to spoil it. We have a lot of things to discuss about what Jared is working on.
Yeah, and I think maybe we should start with, for the listeners out there, Jared, who are unfamiliar with what the DC Milestone Initiative is. And for all of you who are not familiar, please do yourself a favor and go look more up. But Jared, could you real quickly kind of give us a Cliff's Notes version?
Yeah, so the DC Milestone Initiative is really based in the legacy of, Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cowan, who started Milestone Media back in the 90s. That was kind of looking more to create, Black and brown and even Asian superheroes. So the Milestone Initiative today is they brought in a bunch of 12 writers, 12 artists that are all people of color, marginalized people, to kind of participate in a program to learn more about the business of comics, writing comics, creating them, especially at the high level of DC, what DC does. So we went out to Burbank. I got to meet everybody. I got to meet a bunch of really iconic people. Jim Lee is very nice if anybody is curious, but it was a really, really crazy experience. I think I'm very grateful to have met the people that I did, especially the other people that got selected in the Milestone thing. It's a really just a bunch of people that are just crazy talented, and it feels very humbling to be among them.
Well, you can say humbling, but I've seen some of your work, and I think it's well deserved. I'm like I said, I'm proud to be just sitting on the podcast with you talking, because I think the initiative is very cool, but it is also really interesting what's going to come out of it. This is the inaugural year for it. So we don't know exactly what the fruits of all of it are going to be, but based on the lineup of this inaugural class, I mean, it's going to be straight fire. Whatever comes out of it is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I wish I could talk a little bit about that. DC made it very clear that I was not allowed to do that. I feel like there's like a running story in comics about how I'm really bad about keeping secrets, and so everybody really doubles checks, you can't say anything. But yeah, it's a really, really exciting to see how everything's taking shape.
Oh, sorry, guys. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm getting a phone call from DC here, and they're telling me that we need to terminate Jared's line here. Oh, no, I'm just joking.
A window breaks and a laser appears,
I wanted to say that I knew Mr. DC, and Mr. DC told me it's fine, Jared. You can let us know everything.
I wish.
I also feel like this Milestone initiative is kind of like, I don't know, man. Like I know that there's some writing things, some screenplay things, like I think Clarion West and stuff like that, where like workshops and stuff where people say, oh, well, I went, class of 09, and look who was in class of 09 and class of 2012 and all the stuff that they're doing. I feel like this is the same thing where all these crazy talented individuals just got put into this like mixer, and then all this stuff that's going to come, like all the fruit that we as fans are going to get to enjoy in the future. So I'm really excited for it. Thank you, Jared. for giving us these cool things and whatever you're going to give us in the future. So it's a pre-thank you. I think that's the first one we've had on Spec Tales.
It's the first ever pre-thank you.
Yeah, I'm very glad to get the first pre-thank you, but it's really cool because like a lot of us are already talking about doing stuff outside of it. Like they brought all these people together, and now we're like, oh, we can do stuff that's not necessarily involving this DC stuff, and that's really, really cool, and it's really, really exciting. I really wanted to work with a couple of people in the group right after we all met in Burbank, and I haven't had the opportunity yet, but it looks like that's coming up pretty soon.
So it's really spawning collaborations already beyond just what the initiative is for, right? And
yeah.
I really think they're calling it the Milestone Initiative and things like that, but it really, this whole thing sort of feels like a dream team, like the 92 US Olympics dream team, right? Like they're just pulling all the most talented, and they're just like, you know what, you guys go in a room and do cool shit. And
yeah, that's pretty much what they did. It's pretty close, but like the level of talent and in the Milestone Initiative is so deep, and it I mean, some of these people haven't worked in comics yet. They're trying to break in. They were trying to get something off the ground, and now they have this to go on. I was fortunate enough to have some work prior to it, but I think there's a lovely person named Taya in the group, and she's 23 and she's incredible. And I'm like, man, in 10 years, you're going to be a monster, like you're going to be doing just legendary level work because she has so much skill, and such an intuitive approach to it. It's really, really exciting. And I'm just super, everything about the Milestone thing. We have a group chat, that we all talk about like nonstop, and it's really, really fascinating.
Is that a private chat? Or is that open to outsiders?
Unfortunately, that's the NDA chat. That's we can't break our secrets.
I just want to be a fly on the wall in that chat. That's all. I won't even provide suggestions. I just want to see what you guys what you're doing there.
I think you have to get Jake to sign a NSA, non-spec agreement. You can't spec on anything that they talk about.
Well, let's transition here into something maybe you can talk a little bit more about. I mean, we can continue to talk about the Milestone Initiative, but I also think we need to talk about Crash and Troy. Is that something that we could talk about with you? Can you give us details there?
I can talk about Crash and Troy all day.
Wonderful. Well, for all you listeners out there, Jared mentioned that he was fortunate enough to have other work, and we are fortunate to also have his other work, which is upcoming Crash and Troy #1. Now, this is dropping in stores next month. Is that correct?
It's in August, actually.
August.
Yeah.
So the pre-sale date was today, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit past. Your shop can still order it.
Yep.
The way that pre-ordering comics is real messy, but the long story short is they could still order it. And while they might not get some on the day of release, I would really appreciate it if people did anyway, because we might be able to pull off a second printing, and that would be cool because I love doing I have like a promise from our publisher that if we get to do a second printing, I get to do a really stupid cover, and I'm really trying to get to that point.
Well, now we have to try to get that. We got to help you get to that point. All of our listeners out there, you've got to go and see if you can pre-order it or just see if you can get it. Let's learn a little bit more about this. So the information I can say without butchering anything as far as your your pitch for it. It's written by you. Art is by Kyler Clodfelter. Yeah. Clodfelter. Color by Bruno Furlani. Mm-hmm. Oh man, I'm terrible with names. Letters by Buddy Bodoin. Yeah. And cover by Kyler again.
Right.
Wonderful. I stumbled my way through all of that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the storyline? Because based on the title, I'm thinking Tango and Cash in space.
Yeah. So a lot of people have pointed that out. And it is essentially Tango and Cash in space in a lot of ways. I think the funniest part is that I always feel like my biggest influence for it is like Lethal Weapon and Rush Hour, these like early 90s, late 80s buddy cop stories. And I wanted, it's a two mercenaries. They're living life large, and they incidentally break out an intergalactic dictator, and they have to put him back into prison. Or they face a lifelong sentences for themselves, and it's really a really funny story. It's really lighthearted, but it's really packed with action. Kyler and Bruno are incredible on pages, just doing the Lord's work, and yeah, we stuff a lot of Meryl Streep jokes and cat videos, but it's great. I love that book. I love it so much.
Nice. Honestly, the premise that you gave really sounds awfully similar to the first time Jesus and I met in person.
which hasn't happened yet, by the way. Jake
no, this is the documented evidence of our actual first encounter. Jared just put it to paper. I'm just joking. This is a completely 100% unique story told by Jared that has nothing to do with Jesus and I yet.
Yet.
So okay. So we've got this, it's coming out, and we want everybody to go out and take a look at it. It looks really fun. This is something that you already talked about as well. This is something that Jesus and I had a conversation about after we heard you on the Creators on Comics podcast.
Yeah.
So that is Jordan Patrick Finn's podcast, where you actually were speaking with Jordan Clark. It was you and him, and just going through your guys's projects that you're getting off the ground, correct?
Yeah, Jordan is another member of the Milestone Initiative, and his book Samurai Sonia came out last week. So if you haven't picked that up, you should also pick that up.
Yes. Actually, you know what? This sounds like a really nice segue. Jesus, can I do it?
Go ahead.
Recent pickups.
The recent pickup segment. And the reason
Jared loved that.
I was really into that segue. That is a hell of a transition.
It really is one of our favorites as well. We've got a couple of tricks up our sleeve, not too many, but just enough. But the reason I thought this was a really good segue, and I don't want to steal any of your thunder, Jesus, so I'm just going to let you take it from here.
All right, man. Recent pickups this week. Check it out. Samurai Sonia.
There we go.
Number 1, the boys homage. Whenever I was listening to that podcast with you and Jared and Jordan on there, right? Sorry.
Right.
When you guys were talking about it, I was like, man, hold on. I'm generally, if I'm being honest, I'm not a big Red Sonja. Oh, and I also got the one in, I think, 15.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty cool. I'm generally not a Red Sonja fan. Like, not that I'm not a fan. I mean, I don't dislike her. It's just not something I look into, that whole, fantasy. But you put samurai in front of it, right? And that samurai is like, one of my favorite books is Shogun by I think Robert Clavell. And when he said that, when you were talking about it, I was like, man, I got to pick this up, man. And then when I went on there and I saw all these Sonya books, but I was able to get it. I read it. Pretty cool, pretty fun, pretty interesting. Really interested to see where it continues. But this is Samurai Sonya number 1 with Jordan Clark and artist Pascual Colano. Did I say it right? How do you?
I think so.
Okay. But yeah, man, it was really interesting, really fun, a really different take on Red Sonja in a samurai. I just like that whole Sengoku period of Japan. But that was my recent pickup. Glad, Jared, that you stole my thunder. I'm glad, Jake, you stole my thunder twice. I'm stolen thunder.
I passed the thunder along, if anything. I gave
Before
you the best. I gave you the best segue possible. All right, I'm not having any of this. We're moving on. Jared, do you have yourself a recent pickup you'd like to talk about?
The book that I'm currently obsessed with, because I'm like really behind on my pull list, like months behind, but I have a couple books that I read that I have to read, and that the one is Ghost Cage. I think Nick Dragata is he, besides the fact he drew my all-time favorite comic in East of West. I also think that his art is just phenomenal. I'm really just like hypnotized by Ghost Cage. So I'm having the time of my life reading that book. It's so good. Everything he draws is so good. Yeah.
It's mind melting. We have mentioned Ghost Cage on the show before, as I consider it. Now, I have not read the third and final book yet, so no spoilers, but I currently consider it to be in my top 5 books so far this year that I've read.
Yeah.
It's incredible. The art mixed with the storyline, like it gave me chills when I read the first issue. There was something about the art that I love when art feels familiar but new, where like it just immerses you and you're like, why does this feel so natural? Like you're just falling right into the art going, I'm sunk. I'm all the way in it. So that was how I felt. And I still stand by that.
And he's stylistically so different, that you just can't. It feels so groundbreaking because like I'm a really big fan of Department of Truth.
Yep.
For similar reasons. The art is so shocking. But like on that note, like mindset #1 from Zach Kaplan. I can't remember the artist, but it comes out through Vault Comics right now. Mindset #1, it was today, and I just glanced at it. I didn't read it, but the art in that one, when it was in previews, when you were taking a look at it, it was just like it felt almost like a digital Department of Truth. Like it's really mind-bending stuff.
I will have to pick that up. I'm not familiar with it, but I just wrote a note down for it because now I got to read it. Hey, Zeus, you write that down too?
Yeah.
You said we both reached for our pens at the same time.
Yeah, we've been talking. This is a great like semi segue that I forgot to talk about with Samurai Sonia. But finding good comic books, indie titles is so difficult at least for me. And I want to talk to Jake and you, Jared, about it too, because I would have known about the Samurai Sonia. I didn't even know that they push Sonia in so many different directions because there's so many titles, right? Without listening to that podcast, right? And my question or I guess the comment is, how many people or how do people find these other titles that don't get the big marketing dollars, the big publicity, the big and one of the avenues I guess in the past has been your LCS, right? Your LCS shop. They know what you like. They say, hey, they push something out towards you. Say, hey, you might like this, stuff like that. But those are going few and far between, right? Like at least here where I'm at, we have like a big conglomerate, LCS that's not really a traditional LCS. Is 8 or 10 of them now in Houston. So the little ones are harder to come by. But if I hadn't listened to that podcast, I probably would not have known about Samurai Sonia. And the same thing, like now you've told us about mindset. It's Vault. We've been talking about Vault a lot. We talked about We Write Titans last week. We talked about what is it, West of Sundown, right? Tim Seeley. So
Barbaric.
Those are books. Barbaric, that was also recommended to us. So it's like how can we? I didn't even know that's a question. Like I don't know. There's a solution, but it's like how can we get better at finding some of these, gems, these titles that have awesome artwork, that's visceral artwork, that's unique artwork, or the writing is just like crazy good, the storyline is crazy good. Like Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, right? Like those are big names, right? Like that's Rick Remender and Andre Lima Araujo, but still it's not a traditional type book, right? That escapes or what have you. So I don't know. That was, I guess, the comment, the question I wanted to pose to you guys based on this. And this is a great segue since I'm going to be picking up Mindset now whenever I see it.
Well, if anybody from Vault listens, you can send my check just at the Child's Gift on file. So I'm as anybody who probably talks to me for about a week. I'm really big into Twitter. I think Twitter is really fun. 9 times out of 10, The other 10% of the time, it's annoying as hell. But I follow, like, I really like Vault's books. I think Vault has been putting out really great work for a long time. So I follow all the publishers of books that I like, that I've been consistent, and I just kind of check it out as those things come through. But getting into indie comics is like literally getting on social media and finding the indie comics people, and that sucks, right? I'm not saying that's a good system, but that's kind of how it is. It's finding the circles of people that are reading indie titles and kind of just hoping that they'll talk about something that sounds good. It's hard. It's really hard because like I'm fortunate. My LCS knows me really well. He'll come up to me and he'll be like, "Hey, I put this under pull because it seems like something you might like," and I'm like, "Sure," and I just tear through it when I can. Back when I had time to read regularly, but now I just buy stuff on his recommendation and hope 2 months later when I get to read it that I liked it. But it's really about finding the indie circles for me. That's how I kind of got deep into the circuit, because I trade weight big 2 books. Like I don't have any on my pull list. I'll pick ones up by creators that I like, but it's because like I would rather spend my week to week pull list buying indie books, because it is so much harder to get made, especially when you're on this side of it, right? When you're like trying to get it done, you're like, no, like it's good. The work for hire people, Tom Taylor got paid, like Tom Taylor's good. Tom Taylor doesn't need me to pull Nightwing. He's good. He got paid. He's all right, and so like, but it's just tricky. It's really about finding the right people, and it's almost about finding those right people on social media to kind of find out when their books are coming from. It sucks. It's not a good system, but it's significantly better than it was, pre-social media. And I mean, Twitter's free advertising, so long as you're not the main character of the day.
That's a Twitter thing, right? You want to not be the main character on Twitter. That's the whole goal of Twitter.
Yeah, you want to be the quote tweet, not the quote tweeted. So yeah, that for me, that's pretty much the name of the game. And I get people that send me books and DM me and like, hey, you might like this, you might like that, and I try and like follow as many books as I can. But it is very, very tricky.
Very much so. I was comparing it before we started the show. I was comparing it with Jesus to what it was like to be into music in the late 90s, like before Spotify, iTunes, all of those things where, they would feed you all the good music or the new music or whatever. I don't even remember half of what we used to do. Like you would literally just try to listen to music, but where would you find it? Sometimes on the radio. Radio was a big deal. And then I was telling Jesus, you just pretty much had to just watch MTV at 1 a.m, because that was the only time they did any videos of any kind. And that's what it was like. That's what it's now like trying to find good comics. Not good comics. There's a lot of good ones on the shelves, but trying to find some of the good indie comics, because there's so much good content out there. There's a lot of good content.
Yeah, I think indie comics is having something of like a golden era too. Like there's just so, and like I buy a lot of comics off of Kickstarter as well, because Kickstarter, the pandemic turned Kickstarter into like one of the craziest places to get a comic, because there's people that are taking stuff that a publisher would never touch, and they're doing something that's really dope. And like someone like Fell Hound, she did Commander Rao, and it's like became indie Twitter's favorite comic of all time. And every time she like draws abs on Rao for like Kickstarter campaigns, and everybody loses their minds, including me, right? And then nice. She got that picked up from Scout, and then she did another one, and that one, And We Love You, and We Love You was just as successful, and I would gamble that Scout's going to publish that as well. But it has become like kind of a crazy little area for you to find just really insane good books. But yeah, you got it's a lot. You have to find the circle, and then after that, it's a gold mine, right? Like you've got to kind of find where to go, and then after that, it's a gold mine. I have so many Kickstarter books, like probably over 100.
Indie comic Twitter and Kickstarter. Find your next love. Right?
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Send all royalties to Spectales Podcast, please.
Yeah, we should launch a dating app, but instead of like finding a date, you're just finding indie comics. Just swipe right on them.
It would go nuts. I only because it would go nuts.
As long as it works.
Yeah, exactly.
With a few complaints. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go with my recent pickup. So this one is extremely special to me for a number of reasons. And this is something that a friend of the show, this happened maybe about a month and a half ago. I don't know. It's been a bit. We got an email. And honestly, Jesus, you can confirm when we got this email, we both thought it was fake. Right. We both just thought this isn't real.
There's no way.
Yeah. It just immediately just rang as like too good to be true. Not going to happen. So we got an email from a friend and listener of the show, Dan Braun. And you may be saying, well, who the hell's Dan Braun? I'm about to tell you who Dan is. Dan basically thanked us for the content, and he was, very, very, very nice in his email, which was again one of the reasons we were immediately like, wait a minute. Nobody listens to this stuff. And he went on to say that he was a part of the people in 2007 who brought back Creepy Magazine. And so he was a part of, they started their own company, New Comic Company is what it was called. And he worked with Mr. Jim Warren. Jim Warren, I think is the name. He worked with the original publisher of Creepy Magazines, and they published multiple books, but first and foremost, they published Creepy Special Number 1. And I'm actually holding a copy of that right now. So Dan enjoyed our show, and the show we've talked about Creepy. I'm a huge fan of Creepy. I am slowly but surely collecting 1 through 50. And he liked some of our content, especially the Creepy content is what he said, but he liked our content so much. He wanted to show us his appreciation. He sent me, and he also sent one to Jesus, a copy.
Man. I have an open mind, but go ahead. Thank you.
Well, it's your, you know what? It's your own fault for not opening your mail. This is Creepy Special Number 1. And so this actually brings together 14 of the classic creepy stories from the original run. And so the artwork is all, not all, a very large majority of the artwork for like the covers and stuff is all Frank Frazetta, which is just one of my favorite artists of all time. And it incorporates a lot of classic stories with the original artwork. I think Neil Adams did some of these. Neil Adams, Al Williamson, Eugene Colin, Russ Heath, Richard Corbin. There's a long list of names here. Steve Ditko did some. And so anyway, just to get this in the mail, first to get that email, the email was like, hey, I really like your show. Give me your addresses, mailing addresses, so I can send you something. And Jesus and I were like, this is a bunch of bullshit here. There's no way this is real. But anyway, all of that to just say somehow, some way it was real. And it was super humbling and amazing that Dan even found our show, let alone listened to more than 2 minutes of it. And then proceeded to mail us books, mine specifically, that I will be treasuring. This is something that I'm going to read through. Some of these stories I actually I do recognize. Oh my God, you guys have to see this. Sorry, listeners, you're not going to be able to see it, but do you see that? It's a werewolf pulling off. It's a werewolf wearing a human head mask, and he's pulling it off. It's an amazing panel.
I think the human head seems to have like a 1920s strongman mustache, which makes it doper. Like,
well, you know what? If a werewolf is going to dress up as a human, he's going to go in style, which means he's going to have that mustache. Yeah, he's got to have that strongman mustache. It really is a strongman mustache.
That rules. That makes it twice as cool.
That's amazing. So, my recent pickup, very special. It was a gift that we received specifically from a listener, and I don't want to say anything bad about your guys' recent pickups because they were both quite good. But I have just won the segment.
Oh man. There's no winners in segments, Jake. You keep doing that.
Well, there is today because I just announced that I won the segment. And now that segment is over, we need to move on to the next segment.
Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. Grail Tale. That's right, the Grail Tale segment. This is a segment where we ask Jared here to entertain us with a whimsical story about an amazing Grail Tale.
Regale us.
What? Yeah. Well, pick whatever descriptive word you'd like. He needs to sweep us off our feet. He needs to peel us off the chairs. I don't know, Jesus. I ran out of stuff. But
you lose this segment, Jake. Let's just put it that way.
It's not my segment. It's Jared's segment to win or lose.
You lose.
Anyway. To win or lose.
Anyway, Jared is going to talk to us about a comic book grail of his or grails. I don't know. Let's see what he makes of it.
I don't know if I have anything that's cool. You know, to be super honest, like my favorite story. I have a hardcover of I think it's Batman Hush Noir.
Yep.
That was drawn by Jim Lee, if I'm not mistaken. It was a Jim Lee book. If that's not the right, I'm sorry. I'm like all over the place right now. But I went to Dallas Fan Expo, and this is more funny in hindsight than it is anything else. But I went to Dallas Fan Expo, and I had my hardcover, and I had a couple of other things that I was going to have Jim Lee sign. And they were like, hey, it was the second day of Dallas Fan Expo, right? And they were like, hey, Jim spent too much time talking to people yesterday, so he can only sign one book because he's got to make sure he's at his thing today. So he can only sign one thing. So whatever you want Jim to sign, figure it out now. And Jim, I say that like we're best friends because I've met him once now, right? My best friend Jim, he was up there and he was signing books, and there's this super big guy that's like, Jim's at this table, right? He's at a desk like 10 feet away. There's this really tall guy, and I'm like 6'1", and so this guy's like 7 feet tall. Like, he's a pretty tall dude. And I go up, I get to my turn in line. My wife is holding my backpack, right? And I've got my book, and I brought a Sharpie because I was like, if he has only a black Sharpie, then I want to be prepared, you know? And this guy looks at me, Jim Lee's bodyguard looks at me, and he goes, do you have your one thing? And I was like, yeah, man, I'm only holding this one thing in my hand. And he goes, no, I see two things in your hand. And I'm like, one's a Sharpie, bro. I'm not going to ask you to sign this Sharpie. You know, like I don't know if that's like a thing. And he goes, you can only take one thing. So I was like, okay. And I got up there, and I got up to Jim Lee, and I hand him the book, and I go, hey, I hope you have a non-black Sharpie so you can sign this. And Jim Lee looks at me, and he holds up a Sharpie that is definitely like the exact one that I had. And he goes, yeah, of course I have one. And then he signed it and gave it to me. And I was like, I just got intimidated by Jim Lee's bodyguard for something that I didn't even need in the first place, you know? And what makes me really appreciate that story is that when I went for the DC Milestone thing, I recognized a woman named Breyer who works for DC, as one of the people that was working at there, and she was the one coming down the line. She was like, one item. She's not Jim Lee's 7-foot bodyguard, but she was like, one thing only. And I walked up to her and I was like, hey, do you remember in like 2019, 18, Jim Lee was signing at Dallas Fan Expo and he only had like the one thing. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, dude, that 7-foot guy was kind of a dick to me. And I was like, he was really tall and he wouldn't let me take a Sharpie to Jim Lee. And she goes, yeah. It was one item. And I was like, oh shit. Okay, Briar, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know the rules were that intense,
She's like, who, this guy? And then he walks out from behind. He's like, he's just everywhere.
She's like, oh, this guy from Fan Expo that tried to give Jim Lee a Sharpie, get him out of here. Milestone initiative or not, get him out of here.
I'm sorry, you're only allowed to bring one thing to the Milestone initiative.
Yeah, everything else is provided for you. But,
so funny.
What are you supposed to? What is he supposed to sign the Sharpie? Did somebody really walk in there to have Jim Lee sign? You know what? This is the Sharpie Stan Lee used to sign my Amazing Spider-Man 1. I'm gonna have Jim Lee sign it now.
I'm like, I was super confused, and it still doesn't make any sense to me. But I was like, where was the 7-foot bodyguard yesterday when Jim Lee went over his time? Why is 7-foot bodyguard giving me shit and I haven't done anything yet? I'm just like, I'm walking up.
Oh, man. I guarantee though, honestly, guys like Jim Lee, they must get bombarded by people everywhere they go. And I could see somebody really getting up there with like 5 or 6 things and saying like, oh yeah, and I got this Sharpie, I also need you to sign that. And they pull it out of their pocket last minute. And it's just done.
Man, that brings up like, I've gotten something signed from, Stan Lee. I got 4 personal items signed by Stan Lee. And I remember being in those lines, and there's always, stories like Jared's. And I remember looking in front of me, because you would buy like, it costs money to get a signature. So you'd buy a signature from him, right? And I, at the time I was only able to get 1 or 2 or whatever. And at the same time, they were doing that. Like if Stanley got tired and I said, hey, sorry guys, come back tomorrow and we'll honor it. Or if not, we'll refund you. And so like I'm in the middle of the line and I'm looking in front of me and there's like a dealer and he has like literally 100 or 150 books that he's holding on to, right? Or he has like in a little roller stroller. And I'm like, oh God, this dude, like I'm a fan. Like I'm trying to get this signed for me. I'm not trying to like resell it. And you got this guy with like 100 books. And I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to get my stuff signed today.
I watched a guy at C2E2 roll up to Scotty Young's table with a white box and like a short box. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
And Scotty Young was like, no. He straight up was like, no, man, I'm not doing that. Like, it's not happening.
I just want you to sign the box, just the box.
But the book that I really want, the one that I can't find anywhere, and I got to give up on it, is the 9 Rings of Wu-Tang. That was drawn by Clayton Henry, and it was written by Aaron Bullock and Brian Haberlin. And 9 Rings of Wu-Tang is been out of print. I think it came out in like the 90s through Image. And I actually got to meet Clayton Henry during the Milestone Initiative.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you ask him for a copy?
No. So I heard through the grapevine, not from Clayton, to be fair, not from Clayton. I heard that he really does not like to be asked about that. Because it's like, I think it was like the first thing he did. He's done a lot of really dope things since. But I brought it up. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a really big fan of the 9 Rings of Wu-Tang because I read it once. And he was like, oh, okay, thank you. And so he was perfectly nice about it. But I heard through the grapevine that he kind of like doesn't want to keep people bringing it up. He's been in comics for 30 years, But man, I want the floppies of that super bad. I also want 12 Reasons to Die in floppies. So that I could have something for Ghostface to sign if I ever get to meet him, live my dream,
Nice.
That's so Wu-Tang related. Grails, right? So the 9 Rings of Wu-Tang came out. It's a 5-issue miniseries in July of 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron Bullock and Brian Haberlin, July 1999 from Image Comics.
Now they have like collected, trades, right? That those are fairly easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if they're still in print. I have a copy around here somewhere. It might. I have like 7 bookshelves across 3 rooms, but so it's around here somewhere. But yeah, I have a trade that I got back when I was like 18. So it's been a minute. I hope that they're still in print because it's dope. There's like somebody's kicking a tiger at one point, like it's fun stuff, like
yeah. Would you say that book is or has been influential for you at some point or in stories that you've told?
Yeah, I think like if you look hard enough at anything I write, there's a Wu-Tang reference, right? And it takes a little bit, but it's pretty easy to pick up on after a certain amount of time. But like the reason that I like the Wu-Tang Clan, their films and the comics is that it's just kind of dumb fun sometimes, like it's not trying to be something elevated. And I don't think I'm ever going to be like Ram V. I'm not writing great philosophical texts through comics. Like I want to write stuff that's heavy and emotional and deep, but I also just want to kick a tiger sometimes, and I think like books like 9 Rings of Wu-Tang definitely showed me that there's like, you can do that. You can get away with that. And people will dig it. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to be, Ernest Hemingway, Round V, Jonathan Hickman, House of X, Powers of X. I can just be, sometimes I can just kind of like have fun and write something that's just supposed to be fun.
So did this book help you get to that realization? Is that like,
yeah.
Cause go ahead.
I'm sorry. Like as a reader, I read a lot of really heavy stuff, I think. Like my floppies are mostly really intense things. There's a couple of dumb fun ones in there, but I feel like as a reader, that's a lot of the stuff that I read on a regular basis. Versus like as a writer, sometimes I don't want to have to think really intensely and write some grand philosophical, depressing thing. I want to just like have fun. And I think that's sometimes that what I forget in comics is that it is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be entertaining people as well. And so I think 9 Rings of Wu-Tang is definitely like one of those books where I was like, okay, this is just, and people like it. People still like it. I mean, not just Wu-Tang fans. Like it's a fun book. So I think that's also like a part of it is there's a realization that you can write the heavy stuff. You can have fun. You can do both.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. I'm always, curious as to, where some of that realization comes from or when, what triggers it and stuff like that. Because, I've always, and I think we've had this discussion a little bit on Twitter as far as writing goes. I used to write for sports, but I also want to write fiction and things of that nature. And, I'll read certain people. Like one of my favorite writers right now is Shea Serrano, who mixes pop culture and it's just funny. He's also from Texas. He's also a Hispanic guy. And just reading him, back, 10, 12 years ago, kind of opened my eyes to like, hey, man, you can write like this. Like you can write, it doesn't have to be, XYZ or like you said, super heavy or whatever. You can, mix it with how you grew up and whatever and still make solid points. So that's pretty cool, man, that was your realization on that helped you, get there. And I mean, that's a cool book. I didn't even know that book existed, man. So I'm definitely going to be looking for it now.
That's that is officially a white whale, right?
It's good.
Yeah, and that's
really good.
I've taken a lot of notes in this episode, and that one is definitely come up on it. We'll have to dig something around. We'll see if we can find one for you. We don't want you giving up on your white whale. Don't go giving up on it yet.
I will hold out some hope. I think like 12 Reasons to Die came out less than a decade ago.
Yeah, and
so I that one I feel like I have more hope in tracking down the floppies for that one.
Nice. All right. Well, Jesus and I are on the case.
right? That's
yeah. We try, man. We've been trying to connect people through our listenership. With we're almost there on another white whale too, right? I mean, we don't want to give anything away, but some of these grails that are rare. What was it? The Jaws one? There's a Jaws one that's out there that's pretty rare. So we're trying, man. We're trying to be that connective glue.
We'll work a case as long as we need to until we find that white whale. I'm not sure what voice that was, but that was my like detective white whale voice.
The hard-boiled detective.
All right. Well, Jared, thanks for sharing that. That actually is going to conclude the Grail Tale segment, which means we can move on to the final segment. Speculation. That's right. The speculation segment. It is so cool. It's a little creepy. Jesus, I'm going to let you lead the charge on this one. What do you got?
All right, man. Well, I guess I'm a sucker for recency biased, but I still believe this is a strong spec book. Hold on. Let me pull it up real quick. I had it. I don't know why. Okay. So, I think Jake, you're ahead of me. We talked about this as well in the last podcast, as far as the things to catch up on watching. There's we're in a really strong time right now with The Boys, Obi-Wan, Stranger Things, etc.
Miss Marvel. So there's a ton.
Miss Marvel. Yep. So I've been watching Stranger Things, and it got my mind thinking, when was the first Stranger Things? Comic book. When was it in comics? What variants are out there? Whatever. So my spec book is going to be Stranger Things #1. First time they were in comic books based on the Netflix show from 2018. It's a Dark Horse book. It's still a backbin book. You can find it for $4. Some of these variants they have are 15, 25, $20. One of them is a glow in the dark one, which I think is also pretty cool. It has a Demogorgon on it. It's only limited to 1,000 copies from a 2019 convention.
I'm gonna need one of those. That already. Yeah. I don't care what it looks like now. I'm gonna need one.
So they're pretty cool, man. They're pretty cool, and the thing about it is, it's a thing right now, right? Like it's in pop culture, it's in the zeitgeist. We're all watching it together as they drop. I think they're experimenting with how they did the drop in a couple episodes first, and now everybody's waiting till the next drop of
Friday, man. It's going to be a frenzy. People are going to go nuts.
Yeah, and then it's going to come out. The most streamed Netflix, whatever, and and what I'm saying is we're in it right now, right? But if you look 5 years down the line and you look back, you're talking about right during before the pandemic. You're talking about getting through the pandemic, getting through COVID, all this stuff, and people are gonna reminisce on it fondly, right? Like Stranger Things was a really cool horror thing. Dungeons and Dragons, it brought that back. Look what it's doing for 80s music. The was it Kate Bush. Kate Bush. Look what it's doing for Kate Bush.
She hit number one. She hit number one with that.
So that's what these books are going to be looked at. These Stranger Things #1 in about 5 years. So get them right now while they're still backbin books. You can probably find them for cover price somewhere in your local LCS. I'm going to be shooting for some of these variants as well. I really want that glow in the dark one. I think there's a couple 9/8s out there. So that's my spec for this week. Stranger Things #1 from Dark Horse in 2018.
Very nice. I think that's a really, really great, smart pick. I'm going to give you credit where credit's due. And that was a smart pick. I hadn't thought about that. I'm a big fan of Stranger Things, of course, as many people are. But the thing that I think makes it really great for a long play is we've got so many talented young actors right now in Stranger Things, and almost all of them, right? Outside of Winona Ryder and everything, but all of the young actors in it, all discovered by this show, right? Like they are making a name for themselves, but Stranger Things is the legacy. Like that's the thing that they are going to always be remembered for, but they're going to go on to have really great careers. And I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, so two things that to go with that with what you said. I'm glad you brought it up. One, there's a lot of books out there. Not a lot, but there's a significant amount of books signed by Millie Bobby Brown on one of the variants with her on it. and I think those are going to be also coveted as well. And then 2, the other thing about this book that I like, and I think we talked about it in our Floppies episode, like about that I like the lore of stuff. This series, I think it's a miniseries. I think it's 5 books. Explores Will's time in the Upside Down. Not the Upside Down. Is it the Upside Down?
Yeah, it's the Upside Down.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I was mixing that up with Get Out. But it explores that time there, so it's giving you more lore of the show, more backstory of it. So that's another reason why it's also going to be coveted. But yeah, man, that's mine. So I win. Thank you.
Well, hold on, we got to get to the end of the segment before we decide who won. We got to give Jared a fair swing at the plate here. Jared, what do you got?
So for anybody who doesn't know the earlier parts of my career, I did a book called Dryfoot for a company called Mad Cave Studios. It is not about, this one is actually not about a book I wrote, but I did write Dryfoot, and if you buy it, that would also be cool. But they just, I think late last year, signed a deal with a production company that takes the IP and tries to market them out to Hollywood studios. I do not have any insider information about those negotiations or those talks. However, I know that Battle Cats is a big favorite around the company, and so if you can track down a Battle Cats #1, I think in the next couple of years that would be a good investment, because I would be very shocked to find out that did not get a bigger treatment. Again, nobody at Bat Cave tells me anything about their Hollywood movie stuff or their TV shows. So don't buy it and then nothing happens and then hate me. That is just my personal theory. But I also think that Dryfoot is a good buy. I know that there was at least one occasion where somebody was interested in acquiring that. But again, I don't have any interest. I'm not in those negotiations at all. If you backed my last Kickstarter, All the Devils Are Here, there might be a chance that it's coming out in a different form later this year. So if you can get yeah, might be, I don't know, who knows, these things are so fluid, but I would definitely, those covers that we did are never going to be printed again. So even in the chance that it came out again in a different form, it would have a new cover. And those are like, our variants are like, those are 1 in 100, the variants that we did for it. So I have my cut of those variants already. So if you see me or you see Matt at a show, or if we open up a shop, we talked about opening up a store online, I would definitely try and nab one of those, because those are going to be pretty hard to get in about a year or so.
You heard it here first. Take all of your savings, every last penny, and buy as many copies of Battle Cats as #1 as you possibly can. Jared is backing everybody's dollar with a dollar of his own. I'm just joking.
Your kid's tuition, get a second mortgage, do what you got to do.
Mad Cave's going to send me an email that's like, what are you doing?
Oh, man. But no, all very good speculation. You played this game perfectly. I would almost say that was a flawless victory if I was putting you up against Jesus's speculation.
Damn. It's a hard segment to lose.
Yeah. You know, flawless victory, like from Mortal Kombat, right? Where one guy doesn't get any hits whatsoever, and then the other guy just takes his head off, right? It's just flawless victory. And then of course, Jesus, I don't know. We'll go into it later. But you lost. That's what we know, that much for sure. Jesus, now we have to decide, did Jesus get, well, no, he definitely got third, because I'm not going to get second to last here. All right. Here's my spec. And I am going to have to give some credit here to Jesus.
I win. Let's go.
You don't. It's not an instant. Don't take the victory lap yet. I have to give some credit to Jesus because he got this book as a recent pickup. What was that? 3 weeks ago? 3 or 4 weeks ago? Where I'm talking 8 billion genies. Jesus, when was that?
Yeah. What?
When did you get that? Did you pick it up right off the shelf?
Yeah, I picked it up off the shelf when it came out.
That was in May. That was May.
Yeah, so I guess about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Yep.
It wasn't the week it came out. It was in my pull list, and I went a week after, so probably the beginning of June, maybe.
Well, because of your recent pickup and recommendation of the book, I went and got a copy myself. And boy, am I glad I did, because they just announced literally today, Amazon has picked up the rights for a movie plus a more expansive cross-media universe, starting with a feature film. So they're going to be doing a lot. Amazon wants this property they now own it, or they've picked up the rights to it. So 8 Billion Genies #1 literally came out a month ago and is now already optioned. It's a trending book, of course, but honestly, I think it's probably still on the shelves. You can probably still go find this thing on the shelves for cover price.
Yeah, I saw it last week for cover price on the shelves. I also saw some of the variants on there. There's one variant that I really, really want, and it's a what is it? Super Mario 3 homage.
Oh, nice.
Jared, you had some reaction to it?
How do you get that deal? It's not even done. It's not even out. Like, I'm just curious. Like, because it came out a month ago and somebody at Amazon was like, sold, like.
Well, here's the thing that I was talking to Jake about. The writer's Charles Soule, right? And he's the creator. He's recently, like a year or two ago, became the creative consultant for all Star Wars. He's written a bunch of the High Republic stuff. And so I think he's like a super hot writer. I don't want to, call him what are they he's a hot commodity, right? He's a person, right? But he's like a super hot writer.
He's in vogue right now, right?
But he's not as well known, right? Like, he's not like, you say Donny Cates, everybody knows Donny Cates. You know what I mean? Like, he's not as well known as so that's
I'm gonna go across the street and tell him.
Yeah. Just knock on the window. Just hey, Jake's saying he don't know you.
This guy's talking shit,
But it's like he's not as well known. But he writes. I think he writes great. Like I read the High Republic book. I read some of his High Republic stuff. So he's hot, right? And I think that's Amazon, saying, okay, well, obviously we don't have a Star Wars, but we can get a guy that's close to Star Wars and use some of his IP to maybe create, like Jake said, they want to create a huge thing out of 8 Billion Genies, So they're trying to use that to create and I would say artificially, because like you mentioned,
we briefly
hasn't found its full audience yet, but they're just being they're preempting, basically, is what they're doing.
I was going to say, I think we've touched on this a little bit, and we may have even touched on it a little bit last week, Jesus, where we talked about the studios using comic books as an incubator for feature-length films and TV shows, where like Proctor Valley Road, we spoke with Alex Child, and he told us he pitched a TV show for Proctor Valley Road, and was it Universal? I think it was Universal. And they basically said, we really like your pitch, but turn it into a comic book first. And he had never written a comic book, and they paired him with Grant Morrison, and then they wrote the first arc of Proctor Valley Road. Then Proctor Valley Road was a success with the comic books, and they immediately said, all right, we're greenlighting the script for it. And so they were using comics as this proving ground of sorts, and maybe, 1 Billion Genies or what have you, maybe they only needed one issue to prove it. I don't know. I mean, it still seems fast.
I'm just very fascinated by that because, you know, one, it feels like the comic book market is so fundamentally different from the mainstream market, right? Like TV and film. Comics does all sorts of weird shit all the time. And that's been its historical legacy. That's why comics are awesome, is that, you know, if you had told me, 10 years ago, hey, Marvel is going to make an adaptation of Jim Starlin's LSD fueled Infinity Gauntlet, and I would have been like, there's no way, because I don't know when the last time anybody read Infinity Gauntlet was, but Thanos literally fights the reality. He fights like the manifestation of reality. It's awesome. It's very clearly fueled by some kind of drugs. Shout out Jim Starlin. That's dope. But George Perez. George Perez did pencils on that as well. But so I would have never thought that, and they did it, right? Because they didn't do Thanos doesn't fight reality in the Avengers movies, even though that would have been dope as hell, and they would have lost the audience, but I would have lost my shit. But
fair trade-off.
Yeah, they would have had one guy that was like, punch reality in the face, So I'm very fascinated that they're like, okay, make it a comic first, because that feels like, hey, that's a good idea. Take it to the weirdos and see what they think. And if the weirdos like it, we'll put it up for everybody else,
But it's true. But dude, the weirdos are like, they're hardcore, man. They're going to come out in droves. And this is part of the thing too, where it's like all marketing is good marketing, whether it's good or bad. Like, they don't care if they're gonna bastardize that storyline, because they're still gonna go see it and they're still gonna talk mess about it. So, but it's true. Like, I don't know, but I also see it where it's like, Jake put it as a proving ground, but I want to kind of refer to it as maybe finding your audience. Like, I feel like if you find your audience, if this thing hits, if you have enough sales, which I don't even know what the number is, 20,000, 10,000, I don't know, whatever it is, but you have those sales, then they can be more like, okay, well, this is something that we can put money behind a pilot, or we can put money behind pre-production or something, versus a completely, cold pitch. Like, I mean, seriously, can you imagine Proctor Valley Road being pitched as a show blindly, and a big studio like Universal putting that much money behind it right off the rip without, I mean,
they've done worse.
I know, but it's getting worse with unique storylines for these studios, right? They're all trying to reboot stuff and reboot. So that's why I think
it's like what you're saying is that comics give them an opportunity to prove their value. So
I think it's safe. I think it's safer bets from a risk standpoint.
Yeah. So it's coming full circle. It's, like I said, a proving ground. Therefore, Jake trumps Jesus in this segment, but I think the win still goes to Jared. So
yeah,
I think Jared's first. I win second because I influenced Jake, because I told him about Adrian Genies.
I mean, that's a technicality. I could have learned about that comic from anybody. You don't even have proof that I learned about it from you.
Allegedly.
Yeah, where's your proving ground for what you're saying,
All right. Well, Jared, that is going to complete this episode of Spec Tales. It was a blast to have you on. We had a lot of fun talking to you. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself as well. Do you have something that you would like to, where do you want people to find you? Are you in the middle of a Kickstarter? I guess I should have asked you that as well. Is there something that you want to tell our listeners to go do?
Yeah. I have a Kickstarter launching next month. That is the follow-up to Twin Blade. I have a story called Twin Blades, and the short pitch is Mexicans with swords. And we did a sci-fi fantasy style story for the first Twin Blades. This next one is going to be a Western set in the Battle of Puebla, which is really iconic for the Cinco de Mayo. It's the actual battle that everybody celebrates on Cinco de Mayo. But you can find all of that. You can go to my website, Luján Writes, Lujan writes like a pen.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jared, JARRED, LUJAN, and keep up to date with all of my stuff. The Kickstarter launches, like I said, at the end of the next month. Also, please go call your shop about Crash and Troy.
Definitely do that, everybody. And genuinely, we would like to talk to you when you are able to talk more about the DC Milestone Initiative. When there's more you're able to say, and DC takes those, takes the cuffs off, or takes the gag out, or whatever you call it. When you can talk, we'd love to talk more.
So soon.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, we may need, you know what? We may need to do an exclusive on that. Not specific, something. We'll come up with a cool idea, but we'll make sure that we put any news that we can get from you front and center. How about that?
Got it. Love it.
Besides Battle Cats, I mean, this is gonna go like big time. This is gonna blow up with Battle Cats, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. Battle Cats is going nuts, especially since you're backing every dollar everybody puts down. All right, everybody. That is going to do it for this episode. If you want to reach out to Jesus and I, you can reach us on Instagram, spec_tales_podcast, or you can find us on Twitter at spectalespod. And as always, you can email us, spectalespodcast@gmail.com. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good week.